Welcome to EnglishLab Channel. Tune in to natural fluency. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the EnglishLab Channel. I'm Chris, and I'm joined today by Michelle, who, if I recall correctly, once spent an entire week pretending to be a British news anchor. Michelle, are you ready to reveal your secrets?
Oh, Chris, you just had to bring that up, didn't you? Yes, it's true. About 3 years ago, I became obsessed with a specific BBC presenter. I wasn't just listening to her, I was trying to be her. Every time she spoke, I was right there, half a second behind her, mimicking every rise and fall of her voice. My roommates thought I had finally lost my mind, but that was actually my introduction to the shadowing method.
It sounds crazy when you describe it like that, but it's actually one of the most powerful tools in a language learner's arsenal. For those who don't know, shadowing is basically acting like a shadow to a native speaker. You listen to a recording and you repeat exactly what they say, almost at the same time. You don't wait for them to finish, you overlap with them.
It's intense. I remember the first time I tried it, I chose a clip from a very fast-paced movie. I think it was The Wolf of Wall Street, and I was completely out of my depth.
Wait a second, Michelle. Out of your depth. That sounds like a great expression for this context. Could you explain what that means in other words for our listeners?
Of course. When you are out of your depth, it means you are in a situation that is much too difficult for you to handle or understand. It's like being a beginner swimmer and suddenly jumping into the middle of the ocean. That's exactly how I felt trying to shadow Leonardo DiCaprio. He speaks so quickly and with so much emotion that I was just making strange noises instead of words.
I can imagine. I had a similar disaster. When I first heard about shadowing, I thought, hey, I like rap music. I'll just shadow Eminem. That lasted about 10 seconds before I realized I couldn't even breathe, let alone mimic his rhythm. I felt like my tongue was tied in a knot. But that's the thing about shadowing. It's not about just repeating words. It's about training your mouth muscles to move in ways they aren't used to.
Exactly. It's like going to the gym for your face. I have a friend, Clara, who is a professional translator now, but back when we were students, she had a very thick accent. She started shadowing 10 minutes every single day. She didn't use movies at first. She used children's stories because the narrators speak very clearly and slowly. She told me that after a month, her jaw actually felt tired at the end of the day.
I believe it. People forget that speaking a language is a physical act. Your tongue and lips have to be in specific positions. If you've spoken your native language for 30 years, those muscles are set in a certain way. Shadowing forces them to pivot.
That's an interesting word to use there, Chris. Pivot. I usually hear that in business or sports. Can you give me another example of how someone might pivot in a different situation?
Great question. To pivot literally means to turn on a central point, but in this context, it means to completely change your direction or the way you were doing something. For example, if a company realizes their product isn't selling, they might pivot to a new strategy. In language learning, you pivot from just knowing a word in your head to being able to physically produce it accurately and fast.
I love that. It really is a physical shift. Clara used to say that shadowing helped her with the music of English. Every language has its own melody, right? English has this stress-timed rhythm where some words are long and clear and others are short and squished together. If you just read from a textbook, you don't hear that. But when you shadow, you are forced to follow that beat.
It's like being in a band. If you play the drums but you don't follow the bass player, it sounds terrible. I remember a coworker of mine, Mark, who was brilliant at grammar. He could write a perfect essay, but when he spoke, he sounded very flat. He had no intonation. I suggested he shadowed some stand-up comedy specials.
Stand-up comedy? That sounds like a fun way to practice. Did it help him?
It was incredible. He started shadowing a comedian named John Mulaney. At first, he felt ridiculous because comedians use a lot of exaggerated expressions, but that's exactly what he needed. He needed to learn how to emphasize certain words to show emotion. After a few weeks, he came into the office and told a story about his weekend, and we were all amazed. He didn't just tell us the facts. He actually sounded engaging. He had finally managed to break through.
Break through? That's a phrase I hear a lot. Can you tell us what that means in this professional context? Is it like literally breaking a wall?
Almost. To break through means to make a sudden and important discovery or to finally succeed after a long period of trying very hard. It's that moment where something that was difficult suddenly becomes clear or easy. Mark had been struggling for years to sound natural, and shadowing was the hammer that helped him break through that wall of monotony.
That is so inspiring. I think a lot of our listeners feel like they are stuck at a certain level, and maybe shadowing is exactly what they need to find their own breakthrough. But I want to talk about the how-to part of it. Some people think you just press play and start talking, but there are different levels to this, right?
Definitely. If you're a B2 learner, you might want to start with the pause and repeat method. You listen to a sentence, pause the audio, and try to say it exactly like the speaker. Once you can do that perfectly, you move to the true shadowing, where you don't pause at all. It requires an incredible amount of concentration.
Oh, tell me about it. You can't let your mind wander for even a second. I tried shadowing a podcast while I was doing the dishes once, and it was a total disaster. I was so focused on the words that I almost dropped a plate. I realized that I had to sit down, put on my headphones, and really focus. You have to be all in.
All in. That's another good one. It means you're giving 100% of your attention and energy to what you're doing. And you mentioned headphones. That's a pro tip. Using noise-canceling headphones makes a huge difference because you want to hear the nuances, the tiny details of the speaker's voice. You want to hear the way they breathe, the way they link words together.
Speaking of linking words, that was my biggest challenge. In my native language, we pronounce every vowel very clearly. In English, you have things like wanna, gonna, or the way it is becomes it is. When I started shadowing, I felt like I was eating half of the words. I told my teacher about it, and she said, "Michelle, you aren't eating them. You are streamlining your speech."
That's a very fancy word, Michelle. Streamlining. Could you use that in another example so we can see how it applies to daily life?
Sure. Streamlining means to make a process more efficient by removing unnecessary parts. In a business, you might streamline your workflow to save time. In English, we streamline our speech by connecting words to make them flow faster. Shadowing forces you to do that because if you try to pronounce every single letter perfectly, you'll never keep up with the speaker.
That is such a crucial point. If you're too slow, you're not shadowing. You're just trailing behind. I recommend people start with a transcript. Read the text first, make sure you understand every word, and then try to shadow. It's like having a map before you start driving in a new city.
I agree. I actually used to record myself shadowing. That was a very humbling experience. I would listen to the original speaker, then listen to my own version, and the difference was, well, let's just say it was very obvious. But it allowed me to identify exactly where I was failing. Was it my R sounds? Was it my rhythm?
Recording yourself is the secret sauce of language learning. It's painful to hear your own voice, I know. I still hate listening to our early podcast episodes, but it's the only way to be objective. You might think you sound like James Bond in your head, but the recording tells the truth. It helps you fine-tune your performance.
Fine-tune? Wait, Chris, that sounds like something you do with a piano or a car engine. How does that work when we're talking about speaking a language?
You're exactly right. To fine-tune means to make small, very precise adjustments to something in order to make it work as well as possible. When you listen to your recording, you aren't looking for huge mistakes. You're looking for those tiny details, the fine-tuning, that make you sound more like a native speaker and less like a student.
I love that. It's all about those small wins. I remember a student of mine, a guy named Hiro. He was very frustrated because he felt like his English was plateauing. He had been at the same level for 2 years. I told him to shadow 5 minutes of a TED Talk every morning before breakfast.
5 minutes doesn't seem like much. Did it work for him?
At first, he was skeptical. He thought 5 minutes was too short. But I told him, Hiro, consistency is better than intensity. He did it every single day for 3 months. By the end of the second month, his coworkers started asking him if he had moved in with an American family. He didn't even realize how much he had improved until he had to give a presentation and the words just fell out of his mouth without him having to think about it.
That's the autopilot mode. That's what we're all aiming for. When the language becomes a habit instead of a task. I think shadowing is the fastest way to get to that state because it bypasses the translation part of the brain. You aren't thinking, what is the grammar rule for this? You are just mimicking the sound.
It's like learning to dance. You don't read a book about dancing, you watch a teacher and you try to move your body exactly like they do. Eventually, your body remembers the moves. But I have to ask Chris, do you think it's possible to overshadow? Like, can you do it too much?
That's a funny thought. I suppose if you shadow a specific person for 5 hours a day, you might start to take on their personality. I once knew a guy who shadowed nothing but 1940s detective movies. He started talking like a character from a film noir. He'd walk into a coffee shop and say, "Give me a cup of joe and make it snappy, sweetheart." The barista had no idea what was happening.
Oh no. Make it snappy. That's hilarious, but also a bit dangerous. I guess the lesson there is to choose your models wisely. Don't just shadow one person. Shadow men, women, young people, older people, different accents. You want a variety of input.
Variety is key, and that brings me to a point about active listening. Shadowing is the most active form of listening there is. You aren't just letting the words wash over you. You are engaging with every single syllable. It's very high-intensity work. Most people can only do it for 15 or 20 minutes before their brain starts to feel fried.
Fried. I know that feeling. It's like your brain is a computer that is overheating because it's running too many programs at once. But that heat is actually a sign of growth. It means your brain is building those new connections. I always tell people that if they don't feel a little bit tired after a shadowing session, they probably aren't doing it right. You should be stretching your limits.
That's a great way to put it. Stretching your limits. It should feel slightly uncomfortable. If it's too easy, you aren't learning. If it's impossible, you're just getting frustrated. You want that Goldilocks zone. Just right.
Exactly. You know, I was talking to a colleague of mine, a linguistics professor, and he said that shadowing is one of the few techniques that actually improves both your speaking and your listening at the same time. Because to mimic the sound perfectly, you have to hear it perfectly first.
It's a double win. I've noticed that my listening comprehension improved massively after I started shadowing. I used to struggle with fast-talking people on TV, but because I had practiced moving my mouth at that same speed, my brain became much better at decoding the sounds when other people made them. It's like your brain finally understands the mechanics of the language.
Mechanics. Chris, that sounds like you're talking about a car again. Can you explain how a language has mechanics?
I guess I do like my machinery metaphors. When I talk about the mechanics of a language, I'm talking about the way the different parts work together, how the sounds, the rhythm, and the grammar all connect to create meaning. Shadowing shows you those mechanics in action. It's like looking under the hood of a car while the engine is running.
That's a perfect explanation. You're not just looking at a static picture of an engine in a book, you're seeing how the gears turn. I think that's why it's so effective. It's live learning. But I have a question for you, Chris. What do you do if you hit a word that you just cannot say? There are some English words that are just impossible for some people. For me, it was rural. Rural was my nightmare.
Rural is a nightmare for native speakers too. I think the trick is to slow down the audio. Most podcast players or YouTube videos have a 0.75x speed option. Use it. Shadow it slowly until your mouth gets the shape of the word and then gradually speed it back up. Don't just skip the hard parts. Those are the parts where the most growth happens.
That's great advice. Slowing it down really helps you see the tricks the speaker is using. And don't be afraid to exaggerate the sounds at first. Sometimes you have to overpronounce things to get them into your muscle memory, and then you can soften them later. It's all part of the refinement process.
Refinement? Wait, Michelle, I've heard that word used for oil or sugar. What does it mean when we're talking about our English skills?
Good catch. Refinement is the process of removing impurities or making something more polished and elegant. When you first start shadowing, your speech might be a bit rough, but through constant practice and attention to detail, you go through a process of refinement until your English is smooth, clear, and natural.
Smooth, clear, and natural. That's the dream. And I think shadowing is one of the most direct paths to get there. You know, Michelle, we've shared a lot of stories and tips today. I think it would be fantastic to recap the main points for our listeners so they can start their shadowing journey tomorrow morning.
I'd love to. It's been a great conversation. Let's look back at what we've discussed. First, we talked about the core concept, being a shadow to a native speaker. It's intense, and it might make you feel out of your depth at first, but that's totally normal.
Exactly. And we talked about how shadowing forces your mouth muscles to pivot, to change their direction and learn new movements. It's the physical gym for your language skills.
We also heard the inspiring story of Mark, who managed to break through his flat, monotonous way of speaking by shadowing comedians. It just goes to show that you can find your own breakthrough if you stay consistent.
Then we got technical. We talked about being all in with your concentration and using the pause and repeat method if you're a beginner. We also discussed the importance of streamlining your speech, learning how to link words together rather than pronouncing every single letter.
And don't forget the secret sauce, recording yourself to fine-tune those tiny details. It might be humbling, but it's the only way to truly see where you need to improve.
We also mentioned the Hiro Method, the power of doing just 5 minutes a day. Consistency will always beat intensity in the long run. Just make sure you aren't just shadowing 1940s detectives.
Yes, choose your models wisely, and remember that shadowing is a high-intensity workout for your brain. It's okay if you feel fried after a session. That means you are stretching your limits and growing.
Finally, we talked about understanding the mechanics of the language, how everything fits together, and the process of refinement to make your English as polished as possible.
It's such a complete method. I really hope our listeners give it a try, even if it's just for 5 minutes while they wait for their coffee to brew.
Just don't let the coffee boil over because you were too busy shadowing. Well, Michelle, this has been a pleasure. I feel like I want to go and shadow a documentary right now.
I'm with you. I think I'll go find that BBC presenter again and see if I can finally match her perfect accent.
Good luck with that. And to all our listeners, thank you for tuning in to the EnglishLab Channel. You are the reason we do this.
We want to hear from you. Have you ever tried the shadowing method? What was the hardest word for you to mimic? Tell us your stories in the comments.
Yes, please share. We love reading about your journey. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you can stay in the loop for our next episode.
We have a lot more tips, stories, and savvy advice coming your way soon.
Until next time, keep practicing, keep shadowing, and most importantly, keep having fun with your English.
Happy learning, everyone.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Michelle.
See you in the next one.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Thanks for tuning in. Keep practicing, keep connecting, and don't let your fluency fade to static. Leave us a comment with your stories, hit that subscribe button to join our community, and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. See you in the next broadcast.